Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is a morning update. We've been talking about the meeting between the prosecutors and the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein for the past couple of days, and some of the revelations that came out from that. Last night we talked about several different things, one of them being the all of a sudden missing emails from Acosta, and how that is absolutely ridiculous. And today we're going to talk about another revelation that came out from these meetings. And that is that the FBI wanted to arrest Jeffrey Epstein before the plea deal at a beauty pageant. Now, this is being reported by NBC News, and it is just par for the course when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein. Everything that they did when it concerns Epstein and Maxwell was completely and utterly not by the book. They did all sorts of crazy shit that should have never occurred. The sweetest plea deal in the history of the world, him having run of the jail cell in Palm Beach, etc., etc. None of it adds up. And average, normal people are not treated that way. And nobody's been able to provide us any answers as to why Jeffrey Epstein received such preferential treatment. Oh, we have people like Darth Barr that have come out and tried to force feed us narratives, of course, but there's been no transparency. There's been no documentation to back up these assertions made by people in the Department of Justice. It's all a believe me when I'm telling you kind of scenario. But why should we believe them? They've done nothing but obfuscate. They've done nothing but lie and keep this and other important matters in the shadows. So why should we believe any sort of narrative that they're trying to force feed us? Our article today is from NBCnews.com. The headline: FBI wanted to arrest Epstein at Virgin Islands beauty pageant months before plea deal was cut. An FBI supervisor was extremely upset about being denied the opportunity to arrest Epstein in 2007, a Justice Department report says. Right off the bat, there's big problems there. Why are the bureaucrats above these field agents not letting them pursue cases the way they see fit? Their job is to make sure everything runs in an orderly fashion. The chiefs. Their job is to make sure everybody is doing their job. Their job isn't to kill an investigation into somebody like Jeffrey Epstein or tell these field agents that they can't arrest Jeffrey Epstein considering all of the evidence that they have. And that's why when people talk about, Acosta, he's the real one to blame. That's why I'm so adamant that he's not. He's just another piece on the chessboard, folks, being moved and manipulated by those above. And those are the people who I'm setting my sights on. The Mukasey's of the world. The other people at the Department of Justice. Who was giving these orders? Who was telling these agents not to pursue Jeffrey Epstein? And why? This article was authored by Tom Winter and Sarah Fitzpatrick. The FBI wanted to arrest Jeffrey Epstein while he was judging a beauty pageant in the Virgin Islands 7 months before he signed a non-prosecution deal that shielded him from the federal sex crime charges, a Justice Department report says. And now you see why his lawyers were so adamant about getting this deal done, right? Months before the deal was even signed off on, these FBI agents wanted to pursue him and arrest him at this beauty pageant, and they were told no by their superiors. Did their superiors then contact Jeffrey Epstein and his lawyers and let them know what was coming down the pipe? Look, I don't have evidence directly pointing to that, but it would fit the narrative, and it would fit what we already know about the relationship between Epstein, his lawyers, and the prosecution. We know that there were deep ties there. They didn't go to lunch to discuss each other's families or anything like that, okay? Who was the one who was responsible for telling these agents not to pursue Epstein? That's a pretty basic question that should be answered. And whoever that person is, should have to testify under oath as to why they made that decision. The 347-page report obtained by NBC News expands on an executive summary released Thursday of a probe into a more than decade-old sex abuse investigation of Epstein. The Justice Department's Office of Professional Responsibility found that former Labor Secretary Alex King-Koopa Acosta, who oversaw the case when he was a top federal prosecutor in Florida in the mid-2000s, exercised poor judgment but did not engage in misconduct. Well, yeah, how could it be misconduct if his superiors are ordering him to do this? And again, I really don't know how anyone can believe that Acosta had the power or the ability to pull that off on his own. That's just not reality. That's not how these large bureaucracies work. Do you think that these people above Acosta don't want their taste? They don't want their bit of the spotlight when they send somebody away? Or, on the other hand, if they have buddies or people they're, friends with, or people that might be involved in some sort of government operation, the absolute opposite is true of how these FBI bosses go. So again, for me, it all comes down to the people above Acosta making these decisions. Now, of course, Acosta's a spineless scumbag. How anyone could just shake their head, yes, boss, okay, boss, yes, boss, whatever you say, boss, I'll let this serial pedophile, serial child sex abuser just go free after a year. Okay, boss, whatever you say. How do you live with yourself? So it's not like I'm saying Acosta shouldn't have been canned and he shouldn't be shit on. He should be. But what about the people above him? Are we going to allow them to use him as a scapegoat like they always do? Or are we going to demand that it goes all the way up the ladder for once and that there's some accountability in Washington, D.C. and at the Department of Justice? That's the path I'm on, folks. Now, if people are happy with just collecting Acosta's scalp, then that's fine. And they can pursue whatever they'd like to pursue. But me, personally, there is zero chance that this dies on the vine with Acosta like they want it to. This goes all the way to the top. Everybody who signed off on that paperwork, everybody who was in the direct chain of command, all of them have some answers that they need to give. The full report quotes one prosecutor as telling a colleague that the FBI had wanted to arrest Epstein in the Virgin Islands during a beauty pageant where he is a judge. So that would have been nice, huh? Go in there, arrest him right at that beauty pageant, make a scene about it, video cameras, news people there, the whole nine. That's what should have happened. The case agent recalled that she and her co-case agent were disappointed about being denied the opportunity to make the arrest in May 2007, the report says, and an FBI supervisor overseeing the case was extremely upset about it. So they were so upset that they came out and were whistleblowers about this, or nah, they just, kept their heads down and kept their jobs. Well, I agree that I'd been freaked out if I was an FBI investigator or an FBI supervisor and I was told not to pursue this. I would have freaked out. I would have went public. There's no chance that I would have just tucked my tail and accepted something like that. And that's why I can never, ever work for an entity or a monolithic place like the government, because I'd be blowing the whistle every chance I got. What they're doing behind the scenes is atrocious. It's gross, and it needs to end. And if anyone thinks it just started with the recent administration, then your bias is showing, and you should probably step out of your echo chamber for a little while, because this is a systemic problem within Washington, D.C., and within places like the Department of Justice. It didn't happen overnight. This sort of environment has been fostered over the years by incompetent leaders in the position of Attorney General. And we're directly on course for another shitbag to be appointed. Have you taken a look at Joe Biden's transition team? Boy, those people have never met a war that they haven't liked, huh? It wasn't until a year later in 2008 that Epstein surrendered to authorities after signing a plea deal. That the FBI wanted to bring charges against Epstein in 2007 was already known, but the agency's interest in arresting him at a beauty pageant in the Virgin Islands has not been previously reported. And again, what do I always say about this stuff, right? Every time something new comes out, there's always at least one little nugget for us. And that's why it's important that we stay on task and we keep hammering these articles as soon as they come out and we add them to the catalog. Because every time we read a new article or there's new documentation that comes out from the courts, we always find at least one or two little nuggets that help put the pieces together. And what this does, in my opinion, is it shows the complicity of the higher-ups at the FBI for not wanting to get involved with Epstein. Did it have anything to do with his relationship with Bill Clinton, perhaps? The politically connected financier, pedophile, had been accused of sexually abusing dozens of teenage girls in his West Palm Beach mansion, but he eventually pleaded guilty to state charges involving a single survivor in a deal that spared him from serving a long prison sentence. Imagine doing what Jeffrey Epstein did and only receiving the slap on the wrist that he received. Imagine how brazen you would feel. Imagine how emboldened you would feel. So now he doesn't do any real prison time. He gets out. He knows he just got a slap on the wrist. He knows that people aren't even paying attention to him anymore, and he dives right back into what he was doing. If I was one of these survivors who was abused by Epstein after his arrest, I would sue the federal government for incompetence, negligence, and aiding and abetting in my misery. Now, would that lawsuit go anywhere? I don't know, but I'd file it. Epstein ultimately spent 13 months in jail and was allowed to leave almost every day through a work release program. He died by suicide, allegedly, inside a federal prison last year while awaiting trial on new sex trafficking charges. Now ask yourselves, if you know anyone who has ever been in prison or jail, did they have that ability, a work release program? Did they have a whole stockade of the jail to themselves? Were they able to go to their office and work every day for 13 hours a day? Did they have full access to the TV? Did they have full access to their lawyers whenever they wanted them? And I can answer that question for you, because the answer is no. Normal folks like you and I, or your cousin John, or your friend Mikey who got caught up with some drugs maybe and is in jail, they don't get those privileges, folks. Only scumbags like Jeffrey Epstein get those privileges. The report says the federal investigation began when Assistant U.S. Attorney Marie Villafana told Acosta that she was willing to invest the time and the FBI was willing to invest the money to investigate Epstein. But I didn't want to get to the end and then have the U.S. Attorney's Office be intimidated by the high-powered lawyers for Epstein, she said in an email which included the report. I was assured that would not happen. Well, it did happen. And Ms. Villafana, what did you do about it? Again, you're another person who just tuck-tailed and run. It was an absolute travesty what happened here. How could the U.S. Attorney's Office be intimidated by any high-powered lawyers? The U.S. Attorney's Office, the federal U.S. Attorney's Office, has so much power at their fingertips that it's not even funny. They could ruin your life with a snap of their fingers. But they're intimidated by Jeffrey Epstein's lawyers, huh? I highly doubt that. What that really means is, if you read between the lines, they're intimidated by who those lawyers know, by who those lawyers are friends with, by who those lawyers are pressuring outside of this case to make sure that it doesn't go anywhere. That's what that means. Villafana wrote in July 2007, nearly 2 months after the FBI wanted to arrest Epstein at the beauty pageant, "Now I feel like there is a glass ceiling that prevents me from moving forward while evidence suggests that Epstein is continuing to engage in this criminal behavior." All of these people should lose their jobs. Villafana, Acosta's gone, and they should all be looked at with scorn. You know, Villafana can say whatever she wants, but she was in the shit. She could have came out with all of this. She could have blown this wide open. She could have advanced it all the way up the ladder, went to the inspector general, went to everybody that she could have, and blew the whistle that something really, really, really wrong was going on here. But she didn't. The report describes a year of back-and-forth communications between a cadre of Epstein's attorneys, Villafana's immediate supervisors, and Acosta himself, some of which have previously been detailed in court filings. It includes summarizations of interviews with FBI agents, emails, and written documentation about the case. And again, I don't even want to hear anything from anybody who thinks that Acosta's the be-all, end-all here. Do you think those missing emails, that's a coincidence, folks? Or was Acosta in communication with the higher-ups in the U.S. Prosecutor's office, all the way up to the Department of Justice heads? I'm going to go with that theory, okay? Because that makes a whole lot more sense than a middling U.S. attorney making these kind of bold decisions on their own. That does not happen in the belly of the bureaucracy, folks, okay? The bureaucrats above him, they have to have their fingers in it too. They need to have their credit. They need to be involved. So if anyone thinks Acosta's out here making executive decisions on his own, well, I don't know what to tell you. Villafana told the Justice Department that she believed Acosta was influenced by the stature of Epstein's attorneys. Well, his bosses were, and they reached out to him and told him the deal. Look, it's very obvious how this is lining up now, at least from the way I see it. Acosta was nothing more than a yes man, and his bosses put all of this into play when his bosses were pressured by Epstein and Epstein's lawyers. That's the way it looks to me. One of the issues in the case was the defense ability to describe the case or characterize the case as being legally complex, Villafana told investigators, the report says. It was not as legally complex as they made it out to be. No shit it wasn't. It was cut and dry, black and white. But he was being protected from those on high. Who those people were, those exact people, I don't know. I don't have those answers for you folks. But we're going to keep digging. We're going to keep talking about it. And maybe someday we'll find out. But I am 100% sure, 100% positive in my opinion anyway, that Acosta was not the puppeteer. He was the puppet. And there were people behind the scenes pulling his strings, no doubt about it. But the report says neither Villafana nor any of the other individuals OPR interviewed identified any specific evidence suggesting that Acosta or any of the other subjects extended an improper favor of benefit to Epstein because of a personal relationship with defense counsel. Of course not. What do you think? They're that stupid? They're not going to just leave it out there for it to be found out. They hide their tracks. What do you think? Acosta's bosses, intelligence, like Acosta said out of his own mouth, don't know how to clean up their own tracks here? Of course they did. And that leads me back to the missing emails. In a statement released Thursday, Acosta said the report fully debunks allegations that the USAO improperly cut Epstein a sweetheart deal or purposely voided investigating potential wrongdoing by various prominent individuals. No, not really. It doesn't do anything like that, okay? You haven't answered any questions, Mr. Acosta. You've been real quiet, tight-lipped about everything, and you think that you're just going to slide out of this without any more scrutiny. You're wrong. While I don't put all of the blame on Acosta's shoulders, he carries his share, and he needs to also be held responsible for what occurred. The report also raises new questions about what federal prosecutors thought was going on with the original case investigated by local prosecutors in Palm Beach. The state intentionally torpedoed it in the grand jury, so it was brought to us, one of Villafana's supervisors wrote, as federal prosecutors were weighing charges in 2007. Yeah, of course they did. They definitely torpedoed the case. Look at the way they talked about the accusers in the courtroom, calling them prostitutes and hookers and saying that they're bad people because they posted about smoking weed and hooking up with dudes on their social media page. So that makes you a bad person in this world. In the world of scumbag Alan Dershowitz, in the world of scumbag Acosta, the victim is the one to be maligned. Federal prosecutors had concerns about the state prosecutor at the time, Barry Krischer, the report says. In an email, Acosta asked one of the supervisors of the case if it would be appropriate to give a heads up to Krischer on how they were going to proceed with the investigation. The supervisor advised Krischer no, for fear that it will be leaked straight to Epstein, the report says. So how is there no wrongdoing here, okay? If you're worried about this stuff being leaked directly to Epstein, how is Barry Krischer not brought up on charges here? Were they working in concert with Epstein's lawyers? It sure looks that way. The whole entire prosecution and everybody involved in it should have serious repercussions for their actions. As the non-prosecution agreement was still being negotiated, Villafana wrote an email to Acosta describing the pain of 3 alleged survivors who were recently interviewed by investigators. One girl broke down sobbing so that we had to stop the interview twice within a 20-minute span, she wrote. She regained her composure enough to continue a short time, but she said that she was having nightmares about Epstein coming after her, and she started to break down again, so we stopped the interview. And this is the kind of shit the prosecutors were hearing, and they didn't care. They still gave him that slap on the wrist, that plea deal, that sorry-ass, weak-ass sentence. And there's been no sanctions on any of these prosecutors. They've went about their lives. They're all involved in private practices and shit now, making money hand over fist. These girls deserve so much better than they have received so far, and I hate feeling that there is nothing I can do to help them, Villafana added. Folks, that's a big problem, okay? You work for the United States Attorney General. You're a United States lawyer, right? You're a prosecutor for the federal government, and you can't help girls who are being trafficked and sexually abused with all of this evidence lying around? So you see, folks, it's obviously not Acosta, okay? It's way above him. It goes all the way to the top, and we need to change it. But there's no way that's ever going to happen if we keep sending retreads back to D.C., career politicians, garbage-ass people who did nothing for their whole entire run as a politician to help these survivors. Yet we keep sending the same scumbags back to Washington, D.C. Epstein's attorney, Ken Starr, wrote a final email to Acosta when the case was concluded. While I am obviously very unhappy at what I believe is the government's treatment of my client, a man whom I have come to deeply admire, I recognize that we have filed and argued our appellate motions and lost, Starr said. He concluded saying, I would like to have some closure with you on this matter, so that in the years to come, neither of us will harbor any ill will over the matter. Ken Starr's an absolute piece of shit, by the way. All right. The guy's a garbage human being. He's always been a garbage human being. And this just intensifies the garbage smell hanging around him. He was a crucial part of Epstein's team. He brought a lot of credibility to Epstein's team, and he had an in with the federal prosecutors at the time. Ken Starr is somebody who has been reprehensible for a very long time and continues on the pathway of being a disgusting son of a bitch. You deeply admire Jeffrey Epstein? You've come to deeply admire Jeffrey Epstein, huh? Well, that says a whole hell of a lot about you, Ken Starr. A whole hell of a lot about you. And all of these other disgusting sons of bitches who are involved, as far as prosecution goes, every last one of these people, this report be damned, needs to go under oath and answer some very, very hard questions. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI at protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All of the links that go with this episode can be found in the description box. As for me, again, unless there is some new news tonight, something that I feel like I have to hop on and yap to you folks about, it'll be a flashback episode tonight for the daily drop. So we'll see how the day goes. If there's new news, I'll do the daily drop anyway. But if there's nothing to catch up on, then expect a flashback episode coming your way tonight. All right, everybody, enjoy your Saturday, folks.